People that look like they were forced to be there. Good deal. So look, this is the dreaded beach pick. These kids are now 15, 13, and 11. However, they won't sit still long enough for us to all take a picture together, and they smirk every time we ask. I'm bringing you some good news today, but I'm going to go ahead and start us off, unfortunately, on the wrong foot. I have read study after study, and all the research points to 2 out of 3 small business owners, entrepreneurs like us, they give up after the first 5 years. Now, quickly going back to all of these little beauties here, they're all very entrepreneurial. They love lemonade stands, selling stuff at Granny's yard sale. They'll sell jewelry door to door. This stat means one thing: 2 of those little monsters are going to be living in my bonus room forever, and I don't want that. So I am trying to discover what is causing people to just kind of hang it up. I have been coaching for 17 years, have coached over 2,000 entrepreneurs on a one-on-one basis, and taught a ton of workshops. And I have heard every reason and given every reason known to mankind about why people aren't hanging in there. And you hear cash flow, passion. Insert buzzword here about why people aren't making it. So I I think I have finally kind of pieced this puzzle together, and it revolves around our topic today. So most of what we're about to get into is very in depth, how to blocking and tackling. But before we get into that, I have a quick story for you. And much like all of you, I have a pandemic story, my quarantine epiphany, as I call it, that really kind of solidifies why I'm teaching this topic and why it means so much to me. So in 2020, I was sent home from my full-time coaching business and said, "Hey, Charles, we're going to ride out this pandemic thing for, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks and we'll bring you on back in." Okay. So for the next 3.5 months, I worked harder from the house than I ever did in the office. Each day, every day, I am making massive checklists and trying to keep up with all the stuff humanly possible that's going on in the world and helping my clients stay open, keeping up with payroll protection program loans and EIDLs, just everything under the sun. And one specific day, get the laptop open 6:30, and each of these little kiddos start interrupting my day. And it's not negotiable because I have so many people to help. One of them, by the way, this is Lily right here. She's 13, going on 16, and she looks like her mama. This is Ava. She's 15, going on threat level orange, and she looks like me. And this little fella right here, that's Lane. He's 11. He looks like my friend Chad. I try not to think about that a whole lot. So they're taking turns. Daddy, Daddy, my iPad won't work. Well, Pumpkin, you didn't plug it in, so let's plug it in, and now it works. Daddy, Daddy, I got to get on to Google Classroom. What's Google Classroom? I don't know. Let's find out together. And then lastly, the little fella came in. He was in the first grade and said he had to get on this thing called a Zoom. What is that, Daddy? So, oh man. By the way, funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, 21st graders on a Zoom for the first time. All you could see was the tops of heads and little kids sideways, and shirts were coming off. It was bananas. Got them done, shut the door, locked it, and for the rest of the day, I bounced around like a ping pong ball. I would go to LinkedIn and I saw that I had a notification, and then it would remind me, oh yeah, I gotta go check my email. And then I would get in my email. Oh, that's right. Somebody had a question. Well, where was that video? Oh, it was on the SBA site. So I'd go to the SBA site and that would remind me, oh, I gotta go back to LinkedIn. Oh, look, Jake sent me a message all day, back and forth, ding, 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 ding. And at the end of the day, I had been quote unquote really busy, but I had no clue what I did, and I was exhausted. And at this point in time, I'd always fancied myself to be the time management guru. And then I realized everything I had taught about time management was completely backwards, and I had to find a new way to do it. By the way, if anybody needs a book recommendation, I was rereading at that time Deep Work by Cal Newport. Highly recommended. If you got nothing else from this, if you've read it, go back and reread it. If you haven't read it, do it, because it is what we should be following along and doing. So the first thing I like to ask folks before we have any conversations about creating time freedom, and time freedom for an entrepreneur is a pretty simple concept. You get money freedom, but sometimes we don't get the time freedom, and that's the purpose of doing what we do. Obviously, we want to help, we want to serve, but you're not doing it so you can be chained to your desk for the rest of your life. So, real quickly, we have a minute here. So here, either feel free to chime in or just type in the chat. If you could design your ideal work week, what would it look like? And I don't mean buzzwords. People like to chime in and say, well, I just want it to be flexible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What days do you want to work? What hours do you want to work? So you guys feel free to type that in unless you're Ed. Ed, don't type anything. You just watch, bud.
Well, how about I just tell you? Can I just
That'd
tell
be
you?
great. Tell me, Ed.
All right. So my ideal work week would be 6 to noon, Monday through Thursday.
Boom. First one on the list, Ed. Monday through Thursday, 6 to noon. Ed wins a prize if I had it.
Woohoo!
Uh,
I'll take beer and pizza.
me too, bud. 3 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. Great answers. And the answers I'm providing you are the ones that I most commonly get. Folks will say they want to work. It's very common. People want to work about 4 days a week, limited hours. And we all have the concept of knowing that we have high leverage activities that make everything else fall into place. But we have adopted, especially if you're entrepreneurial, you adopted your corporate lifestyle and you just dragged it over. You know, the thing you wanted to get away from, but we didn't. We just kept up with it. This old industrial mindset. But, Monday through Friday, limited hours, or Monday through Thursday, limited hours. So the second and even more important question, and feel free to chime in with this one too, is if you got that holy grail of a schedule, what would you do with it? And I ask that for a very important reason. So, what would you do with extra time? Now, granted, if you are not at your ideal level of revenue and you want to keep growing this thing, it may be more prospecting. It could be creating more content. It could be doing stuff like we're doing right now. But if you've already met that, what would you want to do? Dan gives a brilliant answer there. Spend time with family and friends. Boom. Again, mind reading. This group is brilliant. Uh, that's what most folks say. They want to spend time with friends, family, they want to travel, exercise, see their friends, volunteer, hiking. I don't know why hiking is so popular. I don't think that many people hike, but we all like the idea of it. And we like to say we would go hiking because we want to buy the new Timberlands and go to the state park trail. I ask people these two questions. They're non negotiable. If they can't answer them, I can't work with them. Why is that? For everything we say yes to, folks, I can promise you, you're saying no to one or two more important things. That's the level playing field we get. There's no equality on planet Earth. Everything is kind of changed and different, but our time, uniform for everybody, everywhere, all the time. It is not different. So if you take on more email, another to do, another task, oh, that'd be a good idea. I'm gonna go check that out, or let me add that. You are saying no without any qualms to one of these things you would rather be doing. So as long as you know that, then as we go through the rest of this, as you take on a new task, you can say, yep, I can take it on, but I have to check off one of these other things. Unfortunately, right now we spend so much of our time in areas that are not productive that we don't like 4.5 to 5 hours on our phones, a third of our day in our email. And even though we all claim not to watch TV, I promise you, I haven't had cable in 12 years. I think I watch as much or more now than I ever have. Just because streaming services are so addictive and Netflix will roll right into the next episode and they have a cliffhanger every single time. So these few things alone could quantify and do many people's days. So let's do a quick, who's got a pen and paper? I think Dan, Tracy, Rhonda, perhaps. So we're going to do a quick little exercise together, folks. First and foremost, it's a pretty simple concept. Don't start yet. We all get very excited over the concept of multitasking. And anytime I see people that are being interviewed or they're having a conversation, let's get to know each other. Well, how are you at multitasking? And we all love to brag about how great we are. I can compose an email and have a conversation at the same time. We do that, but we do very poor jobs of it. So for those of you that can write, on the count of three, just write the word multitask like you see it on the screen. 1, 2, 3, go. Pretty simple stuff, right? Tracy, that took her all of a second less. So here's the next step. Do not start yet. But what I want you to do now, we're going to still write multitask, no biggie, but we're going to start with the M on multi, which is horizontal. And then you're going to go over to task, which is vertical. You go M, T, and then back up to the horizontal U, back down to the vertical A, and back and forth and back and forth. Sound good? Rand. 1, 2, 3, go. Let's see Rhonda type that one out. All right, Tracy, did that take you the same amount of time or did it take longer?
Definitely longer.
Definitely, at least 3 times as long, and you might have made a boo-boo. This is what we get with multitasking. And I am not talking about like, I'll pick on Ed, he's driving and listening. That we can probably get away with most of the time. I hope I didn't jinx Ed. But the other more important things, I'm having a conversation, I'm Googling something, I'm picking my phone up, I'm scheduling another event. We are not really multitasking. We're not doing 2 things at the same time, or we are shifting from item to item as quick as we can, and it's causing leftover activity residue, so to speak. And when we make those context switches, we're still dragging around everything else with us. There's this famous study every 5 years Gloria Mark does, and she says that it takes us about 25 minutes to get to a level of focus, and that every time we are interrupted, it takes us 25 minutes to get back to the same level of focus. And we're interrupted, constantly all day. And as I told you with my little story, we self-interrupt. We blame everybody else. Blaming my poor little kids who are having to learn how to homeschool on their own, basically with me as a passenger. But every 25 minutes, that's when we get to our spot where we're doing our best work. Time management, the way we have taught it and the way I've taught it, is backwards. We don't need to do more. We need to do less. And the tips, tricks, and everything else we're learning is not very functional. So step number 1, actually that's step 2, because I needed you to set some goals first, is to find your time. Most of us have some vague notion of where our time goes. However, most of us really, if you were forced to put pen to paper, would be a poor narrator for our own story. We couldn't go back and recount what we've been doing. So I make the analogy of it. Have you ever done a personal budget? Dan, I would hope that you have as a financial advisor, of course. And we have to do a personal budget 3 or 4 times every year and get back on track. And every time we do a personal budget, I have to first figure out where our money is going. I have tried to create a budget before without knowing where our money is going, and it has always been a disaster. If I decide suddenly that I want to cut the grocery bill to $600 and the kids' activities to 100 and gas to 50, that'll work for a day or two, and then it goes right off the wagon. And the reason is that you have to understand where your baseline is. You have to know where that money is being spent. Same as with getting in shape. I have this app on my phone called MyFitnessPal, and anytime I've added a few pounds and I want to burn more calories than I take in, there's the Fitbit will help you clearly figure out how many calories you're burning, but nobody can tell you how much you're eating. And if you try to guess what you're eating, you usually end up lying to yourself. And that's what I've always done. And then as I realize when I'm packing the kids lunch, that extra handful of goldfish or that extra glass of wine at night while I'm watching Netflix when I'm not supposed to be, all adds up. When I'm talking to clients of mine and I say, all right, first thing we have to do is track your time, I get a visceral reaction from people. Oh, I know how my time's spent. No, you don't, or we wouldn't be having a conversation. You have to track it for at least a week. And people want to guess. Well, I can give you a vague idea. No, we can't. We don't know where our money's going. We don't know how much we're eating. And time is much more elusive than those other couple of things. How do you track your time? And that's entirely up to you. When we finish here today, I'll give you my website. In the footer, there's a place where you can download a toolkit. One of the 3 items in that toolkit is a spreadsheet that I have worked on for ever, and it is fine-tuned and ready to roll. Yes, I know tracking your time on a spreadsheet does not sound like a lot of fun, but I'm telling you, if you start to do that, it will change everything else about what you choose to spend your time on, because you'll see where it's going. Other tools, Clockify, Toggle, are apps that you can use, but then that is a new thing that you have to figure out. I've had people that have tried to write it down, doesn't go quite so well. If we had more time, I would explain to you how you can find time on your phone. By the way, Do this later. Don't do it now. But if you go to settings and screen time, you'll get a real clear idea of where a lot of your time is going in 4.5 to 5 hours. And that's not kids. That's Gen Xers and Boomers are spending on these fabulous little devices right here. And it'll even tell you where your time is spent most of, how many times a day you pick your phone up. Find your time. Once you find your time, then we can start making some great decisions. First and foremost, pick the priorities out of how you've spent your time. And by priorities, I don't mean your core values. People get those two things mixed up. I mean a priority as in an activity. So let me give you a quick example. Have any of you guys ever read the book Power of Habit? All right, add that to the deep work. Read deep work book first, Power of Habit second. Power of Habit, great book about habit formation, creation, and replacing them. One of the examples that really stuck out to me was Paul O'Neill was a guy that was hired by Alcoa. Alcoa is an aluminum manufacturer in Alcoa, Tennessee. They are a publicly traded company. In 1989, though, they weren't doing as well as they should. Revenue had fallen, the stock price had dipped, and this guy was going to get them turned around. So his first order of business was to do a 12-minute presentation to the board of directors. Aha, he's going to come in and fix everything. We're going into new markets, going to try lean manufacturing. What's he going to say? Well, for 12 minutes, he talks about one thing: safety. Safety's good, I guess. I mean, who's gonna be the jerk that says, safety? We don't worry about that. Nobody's gonna argue with it, but they weren't excited by it. Safety's not gonna turn this thing around. Oh my gosh, we've hired the wrong guy. What are we gonna do? Look, fast forward 15 years. He took that business from a $3 billion company to a $27 billion company. How did safety do that? Well, it was that core priority, that keystone habit, that thing that if they did well, made everything else fall into place. So before they had a ton of downtime, safety issues, injured employees. How do you think that made the employees feel? Not so valued, right? Not good. So when they made safety the top priority and it was all they talked about, how do you think that made the employees feel then? Valued. They were happy. They were productive. Employee productivity went up. Employee turnover went down. Employee suggestions went up. Profit went up, revenue went up, employee downtime went down. I mean, it just had that one thing that if they did it really well, made everything else fall into place. So that is what I want people that I work with. That's what I want you today. What are my priorities? And when I say priority, I'll have people say, well, mine is all about integrity. That's cool. That's not a priority. I can't schedule integrity from 9 to 12 this Friday. That's not a thing. So thinking of it from your standpoint or mine, when you're doing coaching, we can say all kinds of, we've got a list of 28 things we do in a day, but teaching like this, doing prospecting calls, creating a next piece of content that resonates with somebody might be that hinge point that makes everything else work. Same as if Dan's a financial advisor. He could always say it's all about managing my client's portfolio, which he should do and must do, but it might not be a stone habit. And when I say a stone habit, uh, well, have you guys ever seen the stone, pebbles, and sand example? Great. Think of it like this: the mason jar needs to be filled. Those stones are the things that we must do that makes everything else fall into place. The stones go into your empty vessel first, and you can't have 20 stones. You can only have three or four. And I have people tell me, well, Charles, I filled out my priorities and I've got 28. That's not a priority. That's a to-do list. So I was saying Dan's might, that portfolio adjustment might be more of the pebbles, things you have to do in order to make everything else go into place. But the stones might be the client appreciation events. It could be getting on the phone with clients that are really happy that can provide referrals or doing more presentations. And then the sand is what comes in last. That sand is the stuff that we could almost get by without: checking emails for 28 times a day, or picking your phone up for the 144th time, or taking one more pick your brain lunch, which are nice to do, but you do run out of opportunity at some point. So the next thing you need after you identify those priorities is to get some structure, some people around you and a system around you that makes this work. It's a lot like if I want to start going to the gym, but I don't have a goal and I don't know when to go. And I just bought some shoes, but I'll figure the rest out later. You might go for a week or two, but then you fall out of place. So structure for us is kind of like what you guys are doing here. You are part of a group. You're part of whatever it is, a mastermind, group coaching. You have an accountability coach. You have a personal one-on-one coach that provides structure. And then having some set systems in place that if you follow that make it a lot easier to put the right priorities in there. And yes, structure equals freedom. I stole that from 𝐻𝐿𝐿𝐽𝐿𝐽𝐿. Discipline equals freedom. So I assume he won't beat me up. Now, I've got my priorities. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I got a little structure around me. There's still work to do. And I would love to get you to a point where you only worked, you know, it, and if you use this term, it's fine, but a little obnoxious. Oh, I only work in my zone of genius. Great. But for the rest of us, we still got some other stuff we got to do sometimes. You know, I still have to work on proposals. I got to work on, the actual client work itself. So then it's time to batch the like tasks together. Now, when I say batch like tasks together, that's the things that you do that are most like each other. And for some people, it'll be batching email. Instead of checking it every 10 minutes, you do it twice a day, or they'll batch sales calls together. And I only take sales calls on Thursday and Friday afternoons. That way I can get in the zone of it. Or I only create content Monday mornings, and they do it in these big blocks of time instead of these little 15-minute increments when we get bounced all over the place. And that's what I'll encourage you to do. Don't schedule your day to where you're bouncing from different task to different task to different task in these little increments. That is like your old corporate schedule where you just have an empty calendar and you just fill it all day and then we can show the boss we were busy. Well, you're the boss now. You want big blocks of time, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, where you're working on the priorities. The rest of the things need to be batched together. Think of it like cleaning a house. If I want to clean my house, I batch that together. I don't go scrub the toilet and then run into the bedroom, make up the bed, and then go upstairs and vacuum the bonus room, and then go do a couple of dishes. I could get the house done, but it would take 3 or 4 times as long, and I'd be very frustrated. You do it in batches. That's how we need to work on your business so you're not working in the business. Take those like tasks. So for me, creative energy is more in the morning. That's when I'm doing my priorities. And I've even gotten down to batched days where I am on, where I do lots of presentations like we're doing now, or I do lots of prospecting calls, or I do lots of sales calls. And then I have administrative days and I can get in that mindset and I can knock things out a whole lot quicker. Athletes and actors do this, by the way. Athletes, they have a practice day, game day, and a rest day. That's one of the things you want to consider doing. And then if you've got a list of things you're doing, let's find some stuff to quit doing. And you don't have to quit doing it forever. Make it an experiment, a 1 week experiment. I'm going to give something up. I've got a good one for you. Give up the news for a week. And if you haven't already done that, that's the best place to start. And I know we're during silly season and there's all the things in the world going on, and I must be an informed citizen. No, you don't. I can tell you every time I hear a newsworthy event, there's nothing Charles Alexander can do about it other than to fume over it. Now, if you are actively participating in the community and you hear about something and you go fix it or you go work on it, great. The rest of us are just sitting around doom scrolling, frustrated all the time. I can tell when I talk to either my father-in-law or my dad if they have been doom scrolling or watching too much news that day. As soon as we pick it up, they're like, oh, I just worry about your kids. Like, oh gosh, what happened to them? Oh, just the world we live in. I mean, I hear you. Don't worry about that. We're working on it. They're gonna be okay. Turn the news off. Turn the notifications off on your phone. Quit accepting every opportunity to sit on a board or serve on a committee. And those are all good things, but there's some items you have to just set boundaries for and say no to. And then that leaves you a few other things. How about we outsource and automate some of these items? And I don't know how many of you find folks have employees or executive assistants, or shoot, I've got a couple of virtual assistants that do a lot of the grunt work. And I say grunt work is good stuff, but I don't want to do. So if you see a repetitive task that you're doing over and over, and you know that somebody else could possibly do it, that's great. I'm going to teach you how to calculate whether it's worth it or not here in just a moment. It's easier than ever to create a standard operating procedure, a list of instructions, and assign it to someone. I know it's scary to do if you haven't done it, but a lot of us do. Most of our work is here. We're online, we're on the phone, we're on the computer somehow, some way. Pop open one of those, well, Zoom can do it, a recording device, bumble your way through the task you're doing, record it, get the transcription, and hand it to somebody else. And then if you want to level that up, you can take that transcription, use an AI tool like ChatGPT. See, I got almost entirely way through this thing and never even mentioned ChatGPT. Hand it to ChatGPT and say, make a list of instructions out of this that are coherent, and it will do it. Hand that off to somebody else and give them a shot to see if they can do it like you. And how do you know? Well, figure out what your hourly rate is. And most of you guys have an hourly rate. To sit down and talk to you, tell somebody it's going to be $100, $200, 1,000. That's your hourly rate. And if you don't know what that is, and you're doing products or service, packages, how much did you make last year? All right, well, divide that by 2,000. That's roughly 40 hours a week. So if you made six figures, you're a $50 an hour person. Great. If somebody else can do the same task that you can do for 20% of what you make, and even just do it 80% as well, it does not have to be perfect. And I get that argument all the time. Well, Charles, that they won't do it as well. It has to be perfect. Okay, you do that task. But remember, for you to do that task that somebody else could do 80% as well, that means you are now giving up time with your family, your friends, to travel, to hike, to do the things you really wanted to do. 20% of what you do, 80% as well, is something you should do 100% of the time. And then I won't spend a ton of time here because other people do a much better job than me, but automation, that's that's a thing. We're doing that now. We're not skipping it. It's what we're doing here going forward. In addition to coaching people, I have my own other business creating explainer videos for busy professionals. Dan, usually it's financial advisors and insurance agents, so they can put it on their site and explain to folks what they do. That thing is very automated now. And I don't expect you guys to read the screen, but it's more of a cue for me. So look, when I contact somebody, we have a conversation, they go into my CRM. They buy it from me, it goes through PayPal. They get redirected to a Google form, they fill it out. That Google form answers goes into ChatGPT, it creates a script. That script goes into a project management software and auto assigned to my animation guy. He's outsourced. And that's about it. It automate, 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 outsource. Then I check in, boom, and it looks beautiful every single time. Now, this is why I say time management, or the way Charles Alexander's taught it, is backwards. Now is when we want to put our calendar together, not the other way around. For years, I would teach people time blocking. Well, you just got to time block and you just got to stick to it. You just got to use your willpower. That's ridiculous. You have to figure out how you're spending your time, decide what blocks, big blocks I'm working on, and then what to do with the rest, as we just reviewed: batching, automated, delegating. And then we put our calendar together. In your calendar, you want it to be where it's got giant chunks of time that you work on the thing that you work on, the thing that sets you apart, the thing that makes everything else fall into place. What is your safety, so to speak? And then we batch, automate, delegate the rest. And those big blocks of time, we get so tempted to not do it anymore. We've already had somebody leave here, and I'm not pointing them out. It's just a common occurrence where somebody pops in and pops out. Oh, I've got an emergency. We're going to go do this. When you get those blocks of time, I don't have emergencies. A little over a year ago, I had both knees replaced. Now I'm standing and talking to you, and I feel great. But during that period of time, I spent a lot of my time at the doctor or at physical therapy. Everything else did not fall apart. In fact, it ran not just smoothly, but even smoother without me. So take those blocks of time, schedule them, and treat them like a doctor's appointment. When you are prospecting, and I say prospecting a lot because so many people, I just got so busy, couldn't get to it. Well, what were you doing? Well, I was updating my website. Well, I didn't bring any business. So when you're prospecting, you're creating content, you're writing a good proposal, you're working on your book, you're working on your podcast. Those big blocks of time, treat them like a doctor's appointment, and you won't move them. So, folks, that was down and dirty. 30 minutes here's next steps for you. I'm going to hang out, answer some questions, but make sure you go to yourcharlesalexander.com. There's no pitch. There's no backwards anything. I do have a really cool toolkit that has a quick start guide that teaches you, here's some easy wins. You can get a curated AI list because there's a million of them out there, but I've got a really good one that I worked on forever. And then a way to track your time. So that's it. I appreciate the time. And Tracy, I'll turn it back over to you.